Hello and welcome to our data talk. We're here with Erin Haselkorn. She works with our Experian data quality team and very excited to have her talk with us today about this new global data research report that the team puts together every single year. This report is massive, it's awesome. And before we get started, Erin, can you introduce yourself?
Of course, thanks, Mike. So I am Erin Haselkorn. I'm the head of market research for Experian Data Quality, and I have produced this report with the team at the data quality team. Looking at this study and have done this one and many other research reports, including reports on the rise of the chief data officer, building a business case for data quality, you name it. So we do a number of these reports every year, but I'm particularly excited about this report that we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Erin. So let's kick this off just by starting off. So tell us about the research you did this year and the types of people that you interviewed to get this research.
Yeah, so this year and every year, we conduct a global research study looking at data management practices and trends. So when we think about businesses, how data is evolving and how they're using data, it's changed pretty dramatically over the past several years. So we're looking at how people are using their data, the trends around that, and how they're managing it. So we've been doing this study about 10 years now. And this year, we surveyed 1,400 people from 8 countries around the world. So wow. The US was included, but other countries were Brazil, the UK, Australia, and many countries in Europe, Singapore also. So when we think about data, it's affecting everyone globally and in slightly different ways. So we talk to folks in those different regions. We talk to people in various verticals, so from financial services, public sector, education, retail, just to name a few. And we talk to a lot of different titles within the business, from C-level, down to manager level, because when you think about data, it's affecting everyone. So while it may affect, and we talk to folks within IT, which is where data primarily sits today, it's also affecting folks in customer service, financial teams, really anyone on the front lines with the customer. So we're talking to a wide variety of titles as well to get this data and insight.
That's awesome. So as you were going through all the research and collecting information from all these different people around the world, what were you guys noticing as far as trends, what businesses are doing right now with data?
Yeah, there's a lot. I would say there's no shortage in what people are doing with data, to be totally honest. So we're seeing data, bring forward a lot of opportunities for businesses. First, 80% of the people we talked to said it's critical for forming their business strategy and moving their business forward. So even at its most foundational level, data really matters. It helps in terms of increasing revenue, serving customers, and better knowing your consumer is really important to a lot of businesses. But also things like enhancing the marketing efficiency and business efficiency, down to reducing risk and complying with government regulations. So data affects nearly every part of the business. And even at a foundational level, it's affecting sales, it's affecting revenue, it's affecting their relationship with consumers. So it's impacting a lot of areas. That said, there's certainly gaps in terms of what people are doing with the data and the quality and the trust level within that information as well when you put it into practice.
Erin, companies are collecting, it seems, more and more data. It's all around us: social media, web analytics data, just data from our clients and our customers. We have a lot of data that we're collecting, but there's also, like you're saying, these gaps. So what are some of the areas where a lot of businesses maybe are not using data to its fullest potential?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of areas, because it all comes down to trust in data and the level of strength that we put in the information we have. Do we ultimately think it's going to help us make better decisions and help us be better at whatever task we're trying to perform? And the truth is that less than half of the organizations globally that we talk to don't trust their data to make important decisions. And that's a big problem when you want to be a data-driven business. You're exposing yourself potentially to risk or certain practices where you're not trusting the information you have. And so it's leading a lot of businesses, we're finding in the data, to make educated guesses, to make gut decisions, rather than relying and making decisions based on data. And so, when we think about where that's happening, I would say it's not happening in one particular area. It's happening organization-wide, from the highest levels, down to just making a decision based on what am I going to do with this customer today.
Why do you think a lot of businesses are having trouble trusting their data?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. So, first, in terms of trusting data, you need to make sure that it's accurate and complete. And we're seeing a lot of challenges in terms of human error, where people are, there's a lot of manual data entry. So there's fat fingering. There's not a lot of visibility into data. So it's kind of almost this black box that you don't know what's going on there. And you don't have a lot of insight into what's happening in terms of the governance of that data, where it's coming from. There's not a lot of context around information. And when you don't have that trust, the interesting part is when we make decisions, it's not purely going to be based all the time on data. And that's not what we're saying. You're going to think about your experiences in the world. You're going to look at your colleagues and ask their opinion. But data should be an important input. And so when you lack that trust in information, you're lacking that kind of very valuable input, because we have tons of data that we have today. If we don't have trust in it, then it's kind of useless. And we're spending a lot of money dealing with data that's not providing any return on investment.
Erin, what are some of the top data management changes that you're seeing for 2017?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So I think first, we're going to see a rise in the chief data officer. So the chief data officer, also known as the CEO, although refer to that as a chief digital officer. There's a lot of different acronyms that are flying around these days, which is no surprise. But the chief data officer, I think, is going to become increasingly important. So when you think about data management, one of the central components of success that we see at Experian is that companies invest in their people. And the people around data management are going to be really critical to the success of using data and gaining that trust. So right now, about 1 in 4 organizations are, managing their data, reviewing it in a central type of fashion. Now, that's not to say, that there aren't going to be business users that have control of their data. On the contrary, and I'll get into that trend in a second. But, a chief data officer is really good for evangelizing data within the business, providing some consistency, providing in terms of governance and rules, some kind of standard processes that people can go through. And I think a chief data officer is going to be really important in that. In fact, we're seeing a lot of C-level executives that we're surveying saying that this is the #1 data role that they're going to hire over the next 12 months. So that's really critical. So I think we're going to see a big shift there. And the other big change that we're going to see is around data when it comes to who owns the data. Is it IT? Is it the business? So right now, IT is the most influential department when it comes to data and how it's handled. If you think about your own business, a lot of times you may be making requests of maybe a technology person or a data person within your business to give you insight on data that's residing within a system. And it can take a day or longer for those people to get back to you. With the real-time speed that we're moving in today, most of us don't have time to wait for a day, a week, or more to get insight back to make a decision on what we're going to do next. So what's interesting is that we're going to see this big shift where most of the respondents we talk to say ultimately the business should be responsible for data with occasional help from IT. But the business users who have kind of the context around the data, the ones that can decide, is it fit for purpose? Is this what I need to use? Are the ones who are going to have ultimate responsibility. So I think what we're going to see is this shift, and we're already starting to see it with the rise of tools like data preparation and some other areas where the business users are going to kind of take back control of their data. And it's kind of become less IT focused and more about, we just need to get access to this information. We need to use it. We need to make the right decisions. And how can we empower people to do that?
That's awesome. I want to remind everyone, if you'd like to get this report, it's completely free. The URL link is in the About section of this YouTube video. You can also get it by going to the short URL, which is just ex.pn/global data. Again, that's ex.pn/global data, and that will take you over to our Experian Data Quality website where you can get the full download of all this awesome research that Erin worked on. So before we go, Erin, can you share maybe some of the top findings, like some key takeaways from this report that you think are really valuable?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we all have a lot of data today, and the volume and breadth of that information is making it difficult to manage. Struggling with data is not a unique circumstance. It's something that a lot of businesses are facing right now. But it's very important that we develop trust in data. If we're going to use data, if we're going to maintain a competitive advantage, if we're going to understand and kind of anticipate the decisions that we make as a business, data is going to be really important to that. So having confidence in that data, is going to be really crucial to business decision-making, efficiency, and whatnot. And I think in order for people to make those improvements, it's important that they look at their data management practices now, which are, quite frankly, from what we see, a little bit out of date, still reliant on manual processes, lacking in investment. And I think it's really important that we, as a group, learn to talk a common language about data so we can gain that investment, we can get insight from our senior leaders to make changes to our data management programs, and that we invest in those programs. And I'm not talking about just let's slap a piece of technology in one department and go with it. It should be, more of a strategic level. It should be a long-term investment where, businesses are looking not only at technology to help them, but looking at how do they invest in their people? How do they change their business processes to be more data-centric? And until you start taking a much wider approach to data management, which we talk about in the research and is shown, then you're going to still see this lack of trust in information. So I think it's important, and we see from the data, to take it up a notch, to think about it on a more strategic level, and to get buy-in for long-term changes to data management, not just necessarily quick fixes that are just going to help with one small piece of it.
That's awesome. Erin, thank you so much for being our guest in Data Talk today. As always, I love the research that you're doing. Again, for those that are just tuning in, if you'd like to get that free report, the URL is in the About section of this YouTube video. Again, it's on our Experian Data Quality website. You can find the landing page at ex.pn/global data. Again, ex.pn/global data. Erin, thank you so much for sharing your key insights on this report, and we look forward to chatting with you again very, very soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Erin.